A masterpiece in film capturing scene after furiously fast-paced scene which blends fact with fiction, beauty with artifice, truth with lies, art with forgery, expertise with amateur, authenticity with fakery. I'm your coup d'etat host, David, and today we're discussing F for Fake by Orson Welles. The real question is not whether it is authentic or inauthentic. The real question is it a good fake or a bad fake?
I am in love with this movie. This movie's phenomenal. This movie's absolutely phenomenal. Of course, Orson Welles finally covering the big kahuna, David. F for Fake is a remarkable film. What do you think of it?
I was blown away by it. Overwhelmed was one word. Just the acting, the music score. There's so much to discuss. I don't even want to analyze this film. It's just untouchable.
It really is. There's like so many layers to it. Even if we just focus compositionally, like we'd still be here for hours. If we focus on the messaging of the film, what the film says both about art and life and what is or what is not a masterpiece or a painting, we'd be here for days. There's really just so much in this film, but it's just amazing that it's so articulate, that it's so fluent, that it translates all of these concepts effortlessly with Orson Welles' personality. It's just as boastful, it's just as thoughtful, and it's just as wry and double-dealing as his personality was. I think it's a phenomenal, I guess, docudrama, right? I guess it's a phenomenal film that really you don't know what's real or fake, and in the end, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's what he says, and he says it so well with that scene with the chapel and the stone figures.
Oh, yeah, that's one of the standout scenes of the film, where he talks about how maybe a name doesn't really have much value. Of course, this is a film that questions what is the value of art. Is it in the signature? Is it in the muse? Is it in the composition, the composure of the art of the painting itself, and also who determines that value? Is it experts? Is it forgers? Is it misfits? If there weren't any experts, would there be any forgers, and vice versa?
Yeah.
I mean, hitting on any concept of this film will drive you mad in the best possible way. And with your permission, a bit of verse by Kipling. When the first flush of a newborn sun fell on the green and gold, our father Adam sat under the tree and scratched with a stick in the mold. As the first rude sketch that the world had seen was joy to his mighty heart, till the devil whispered behind the leaves, "It's pretty, but is it art?" What's the first thing that stood out to you when we were watching this?
The language that he's using and the ways in which he conveys the language he's using. Not just because it's a film, and the film-making process itself is deeply inauthentic in a way. How there's this ability for filmmakers to try and capture something like truth or beauty or, maybe authenticity would be more to the core. But then he has to do it in a way that's take two.
Exactly.
Right?
Like he always goes out of his way to show his, I'm pretty sure, uncredited co-director, Francois Reichenbach, and the rest of the crew. He has to tell you that, Oja is Kodar is is like an actress or something like that. He has to go out of his way to tell you these things and pretend he's going to do another take. And I mean, even revealing the crew half the time is completely staged, is artificial, is in service of him saying, like, meta-contextually, yes, this is all fake, but even the revelation of the fakery is fakery in and of itself, but it's still more truthful than if he hadn't shown them in the first place.
Not only that, but I'd also like to take a moment to just gush over how much scope and variety Orson Welles covers in this particular film, F for Fake. He just goes out of his way to have such a humongous territory of expression and explanation, at least in his view of things. And not only that, but what we as the audience looks at. And you see this super self-aware composition happening throughout the film. You see these eyes always looking back at the camera. And that's not to be arrogant or anything or self-absorbed, right? He's trying to make us self-aware of our own delusions, just as he's self-aware of his.
And it's just, there is a magic trick in the film as well. At about the hour point, he goes into a beautiful story that he swears to God is true about Picasso and about his muse, played by Kodar, who we saw earlier. I mean, he spends that first hour kind of somewhat telling us the truth, even though there are staged interviews with very real people, but there are actors surrounding them and everything is super composed, so it still has the artificiality to it, the self-aware artificiality. But he is talking about Picasso every so often in the first hour, almost name dropping him, and you don't really realize why he's doing it. And of course he references Kodar a few times in that first hour, and it just kind of just bleeds into the style, and you're not aware that he's setting up his own forgery. His main trick of the film is this incredibly multi-layered 3-act operatic story between Kodar, who he claims was a muse of Picasso, who inspired 22 paintings and made him erotically mad and savage even, who meets her grandfather, who is the world's greatest, most secretive art forger, and they talk about what is and what isn't art. And of course Orson Welles is using the most incredible editing to really express everything about this hyper intense, hyper romantic, and also hyper fictionalized in the end account of this story. Even when he's talking to Kodar, it goes into a film noir atmosphere, but with philosophical trappings as opposed to fatalistic ones. And then at the very end of it, he's like, well, here's a confession. Kodar, she is Hungarian, but you never met Picasso, right? Your grandfather wasn't an art forger. Yeah, I told you for the first hour everything I would say was truthful, but that hour ended 17 minutes ago, and I've been lying my head off. And I mean, it's just brilliantly composed in the sense that he set us up to completely buy into it, even though we know that we shouldn't. We want to buy into that inauthenticity, but him dropping little hints of Picasso and Kodar through the first hour made it more easily digestible, I think. But still, we want to buy into that authenticity. Like I said, it was operatic. It was incredible, and you wanted the story to be true. And you're sitting there going, "Why haven't I ever heard of this? This is an incredible story. They should make a movie out of it." Well,
and remember, he said in the very beginning, "Am I a magician or a charlatan?" Well, I'm a charlatan. Mm-hmm. And so he gives you that little hint, that foreshadowing right at the very start. That was a brilliant brushstroke.
It's a deeply truthful film full of lies. Or vice versa. It's a deeply dishonest film full of truth.
I want to ask you, what do you think that last 17 minutes where he just lies his head off, what do you think he was really trying to get at there?
Well, to answer the question, the quote that you kind of evoked earlier about, it's not whether or not it's an authentic or inauthentic story or piece of art, it's whether it's a good fake or a bad fake. And that was a brilliant fake. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't even matter that it's not true. It doesn't even matter that it's unreal, because I went through such an emotional roller coaster. I went on a journey of self-reflection, introspection, because of this fakery, on account of it. And it doesn't matter that it's fictive. It doesn't matter that it was entirely unreal, because maybe names have no point after all. What's the value in something? I think that it was a good fake, and he was showing us the value of a good fake, which is almost indescribable and indecipherable from the real thing. It doesn't matter that it didn't happen. I have the same response to it, or maybe actually I'm more thrilled by it knowing that it was fake, but I believed it to be true. And I think that that's at the heart of filmmaking too. You're stunned by a film normally because in the moment you are taking it as reality, even though the better part of yourself knows that it is all artificial. But that's what makes the fake a good fake.
I almost got a Hamlet vibe to how wide the scope was in that particular ending, how the impression just imbued itself in layer upon layer of emotionality. Just so much, like just the romance of it, the noir, as you said. But beyond that, it almost felt like there was like this culmination really into like almost a trembling fear of awe. But at the same time, it's like you have a reverence and a respect for what's being expressed, but it's inexpressible because you try and get at it and it just kind of eludes you. It's right on the horizon and you try to reach out and touch it and you can't.
And I think that like art is elusive, right? Um, it's sleight of hand. You think you see one thing, but it's a complete other thing. I mean, the film ends with him making her grandfather, or the ideation of it, disappear, right? The very concept of him. And boom. No, this film is absolutely masterful. Orson Welles is an untouchable master. He is a static being master. He is just almost beyond reproach. And also, I mean, his films are incredibly accessible, right? But when you go to analyze them, they often have so many layers to them, not just within the film's themes themselves, but especially in F for Fake, he's talking about things much larger and outside of the film that all seem contained within it. It's a film that is truly beyond itself in an extraordinarily transcendental way, because it's almost impossible to pin down into an analysis video like this,
Yeah,
Like, you pick one concept, you could go off on it for 20 minutes, and there's 50 other concepts we didn't even touch on.
absolutely. Yeah.
He is like Kubrick or Hitchcock in that way that, I mean, he might even be distracting us through our analysis, but he is like those guys where there are so many ways to approach his films because he was a prodigy, he was a master, he was born for this medium. And
It's like we're trying to build ourselves a stone chapel, and then our names are going to be forgotten. And like here we are talking about something, and who are we? Who am I? Like,
Well, and it shows like the kind of morbid self-awareness he has sometimes too, because he knew he was an auteur, and he knew that in making an analysis video for F for Fake, you have to say his name 1,000 times. Like, his name is incredibly important to this film. This film is almost his personality writ large, and I think it's about, I mean, one of the greatest artists of the 20th century making an incredible statement about the purposes of art
hmm,
in one of his final films, if not his final one. Like, talk about technicalities. This is really him saying his last indelible mark, truly.
yeah, and the blending of all of those almost countless parallels happening, right? And that towards the end, I just got this elimination of separation between self and other.
Mm-hmm.
That feeling was absolutely captivating. Like there was a moment in the end where the whole Pablo Picasso hoax is unfolding, where I just forget myself completely.
Yeah, I'm completely in the same boat with you. Like, it is so well put together, so well structured, especially that Picasso sequence. The editing is otherworldly. You just get so lost in all of this expressionism, all of this. Oh my God, it's I'm like pulling my hair out right now because like the film's just impeccable. And it speaks directly to me. I love films that made by great artists that really do try to commentate and make some statements about art itself, about the thing that they. A lot of these people revolutionize these things, and Orson Welles definitely did revolutionize film. And it's incredible to see him make these statements about art and seem to have such an understanding of not just his place in the art world, but art's place within the human condition, or maybe more importantly, the human condition's place within art.
Yeah, I agree with that absolutely. And I also wanted to point out like how much I was self-aware in the beginning of the film, and then completely lost at the end.
Yeah. And that's by virtue of composition. That's by the power. And it was so deliberate. He was keeping you along, like as you said, like I almost had a rapid speed staccato editing that was almost unheard of in a documentary or docudrama at the time, unless we're talking about some like truly underground and avant-garde like documentaries, which can hardly be called documentaries. But this, like, it's rapid speed, and he strings you along, and so he could slow you down and truly get you into a true tempo, into a true rhythm for his own forgery. But the whole trick is that first hour is not entirely authentic either. The first hour is full of forgery, but it's a staged forgery. But then so is the Picasso one, because it's almost like watching a play, a highly stylized play near the end of it. You see, even then, like, I went to analyze it and was back to fucking square one by the end of my sentence, because, like, it's truthful to his style. Like, the style never betrays itself. It tries to betray the audience.
Yeah, it does. And the subject matter being Emile de Ori, like, throughout. And then it just...
Yeah, Elmire, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Elmire. And...
Who later committed suicide to avoid prison, yeah.
And then it just jumps ship from that whole subject.
And would you call it like a celebration of forgeries, like a celebration of Elmire?
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, Orson Welles obviously is an unreliable narrator in this film. He's a charlatan, as he said. But he also seems incredibly... He doesn't really apply morality to this situation. He seems to really be finding it... He's kind of cynical, but kind of... like humorous and funny. I think he agrees with certain sentiments. Like he doesn't like experts. He feels that, like, obviously by the composition of the film, that a good fake is a good fake. And what are you going to do? What do you want me to confess of committing masterpieces? Like he is that particular artistic individual. But I mean, I really love the tone of the film when he's talking about Elmire and he's talking about Clifford Irving. And I love, when he's talking about Howard Hughes or his own radio War of the Worlds days, or when he interviews Joseph Cotton in a very staged interview. Like, the tonality is, like, incredibly perfect. Like, it is friendly, it is charming, charismatic, of course. It's sardonic, it's self-aware, but then we get to chapel scenes, right? Or we get the scenes where he does the quote from Kipling.
Deeply meditative.
And it's deeply meditative, deeply poetic, super philosophical, and it strikes you to your core. Like, it's the perfect tone. It's the perfect personality, because then right after that, he'll make one of his wry jokes that are always fun, because he has that warm... He was a screen everything. Like, dude, like, and then... You get lost in the docudrama again with all of the editing, and then it returns to something deeply introspective. It's wildly structured. I mean, that tonality is so unique. There's really never been a film quite like this one.
It's so much of a synthesis because of the antithesis and the thesis blending in together. That's just what's so captivating and mind-blowing, right? Each antithesis and thesis happening in tandem, scene after scene. And there's just so much to break down. I just can't even begin. Like, just one of I already covered the self-other dichotomy, but one of the other things I wanted to cover was how much beauty was meditated upon, and how much that was juxtaposed with the artifice while Oya was walking through the scenes, and in the background there was the crumbling concrete wall. That just, like, really struck out to me. That was something I saw and really enjoyed.
Oh yeah, and the transposed imagery of Kodar onto the photographs of Picasso looking through the blinds, the superimposition. Like, oh my lord, this is wildly experimental, but every experiment is, like, pays off in its full totality of expression. Like, he pulls everything off.
And the gradient as well. So he goes through the gradients of the beauty and the artifice, and how he goes with just the raw beauty of a womanly figure, and then he goes to the gross and ugly eyes of staring men at this beauty, And then that's just the far gradients, and then he kind of like blends it all together with that chapel scene, where there's that blending of the artificial and the beauty together to make that moment of silence.
No, absolutely.
You have any thoughts about this? Closing thoughts, perhaps?
Well, I just got lost for a moment thinking of Orson Welles just brilliantly starting his film with Kodar, obviously staged, walking around for men to stare at her, and that's like the primary component of forward momentum for his Picasso story is just more eyes on her, including your own. He forces the audience to objectify her, and it's not like he does it like slyly. He's a charlatan. He has her running around naked. Like, and then he does like severe close-ups on her fucking ass crack like several times. Like, he's doing everything in his trick book. It doesn't matter if it's highbrow or a terribly lowbrow. He uses every trick that he has to make us fall for this fake, make us fall in love with this fake, and he does it. He does it. He's not like above certain ideas. He's not above certain like ways of framing.
Nothing's
women.
taboo.
Nothing's taboo. In fact, I always love art as a means of violating taboo, and he almost violated the ultimate one, which is audience trust. And he has the charisma and charm to make you love him for it.
That is well said.
What about you? Any clothes? I mean, I actually think it's safe to say, maybe for the first time on this channel, that Orson Welles defeated us. I think we've been defeated by the movie because, like, I feel like we could go on for an hour, and I also feel like we can't.
Yeah,
You know?
That is so real right now. Absolutely. I do want to say one thing, though. I've always had this little hunch in my head how art itself is a means to express something that's inexpressible, but we really can't express it, right? When we do try, we always fail, and that's the human condition, is that failing, but try anyway. And that was always one of the hunches I've had about art as a whole, and this meta-critique on art itself by Orson Welles in F for Fake. It was just so mind-captivating and blowing and just enthralling in so many different ways. And it just, to me, it elevated my own linguistic expression of what it means to imbibe and appreciate art as an audience member. And to have that sense of elevation where I can, like, I don't know, it's almost like I feel like I've gone 100 years into the future again, where he's like able to talk about spooks and stuff, where the modern philosophers are touching at some of these really mind-blowing, cutting-edge analytical tools. And he did this almost like, 40 some odd years ago? Like,
Yeah, 73, right?
Yeah. And that's just something that just shocked me to my core. And having that sense of, it's like almost like a new profound power.
Yeah.
And I have to have a deep sense of respect and humility to use it wisely. And not to be arrogant.
I mean, this film to me is the ultimate shock and awe. Like, the uniqueness found in this film, the profound statements, and as you said, meta-critiques of art found in this film, you can't find anywhere else.
Yeah.
No matter how hard you try, this is easily, to me, one of the most masterful films of the 70s. And, I mean, it's even difficult for me to call it a film because it doesn't conform to any other film that I've ever seen. It's something just so, like I said, beyond itself. It's just, I've never seen something this successful on every wildly experimental and sometimes just like overly ambitious thing that it does. It completely succeeds. It is wildly successful. And I'm not saying that it defeated our analysis of it because it's beyond us or anything on an analytical or philosophical level. It might be the most articulate art film I've ever seen. Like, and it expresses all of these lofty ideas, all of these philosophical ones, remarkably well. Like, I understood everything that Orson was trying to communicate with me.
I wish I could say that. There's a lot that just completely eluded me, and I'm willing to admit that. I'm willing to admit that I have no idea some of the many, many different levels of expression he was trying to convey, and I'm content with that.
I mean,
honestly.
none of it like missed the mark, is what I'm saying.
Oh, of course.
Like every part of like emotional or like intellectual thing he was trying to compel from his audience, he completely succeeded in. No, I'm not going to be boastful enough to say that I completely understand any master or any master's film, but I meant more so like everything he tried to compel from me, he absolutely succeeded in. And
I see, yeah.
I mean, I don't think there was any flop in the film, which is like made up of like so many countless components and elements. I think everyone hit exactly the way he wanted to. The sleight of hand worked. I was distracted when I should have been more focused. You know, like everything worked. And Orson Welles. I mean, I'm sorry, he's untouchable.
And isn't it that one quote where it says, the mark of a genius is how the genius can make something so difficult seem so effortless?
Mm-hmm.
I would say that is exactly what Orson Welles did.
Yeah, incredibly energetic.
Mm-hmm.
Especially being so late in his career to come and, in my opinion, just revolutionize the cinema once more. What an extraordinary fucking movie. Oh my god. Well,
I don't think there's much left to be said anyway, but we'd love to hear your comments and all of your feedback on this and
Absolutely.
what you got from this. Please watch it if you haven't. F for Fake. I please hope that you did watch it before you will listen to us ramble.
Yeah, this would have spoiled the entire trip.
Yeah, absolutely. And let us know what you thought. Thanks for listening.
This fucking movie was amazing.